Nobody was supposed to remember Birmingham. That's the thing you have to understand before any of this makes sense. This wasn't a marquee event. This wasn't the kind of tournament that gets pinned to anyone's career highlight reel or discussed in breathless tones on sports radio. It was a grass court warm-up, a mid-tier draw sandwiched between the tournaments that actually matter, the kind of event where attendance is polite at best and the press corps is a skeleton crew filing copy nobody reads until Tuesday. A third of the seats empty. The scoreboard operators on autopilot. Officials going through the motions with the quiet exhaustion of people who've seen it all before. And then something shifted. It started before the first ball was struck. Before the players had even finished their warm-ups. The people who noticed it first weren't fans. They were the ones who work these events for a living. The security coordinators who show up early, check the perimeters, brief the staff, and then move on with their day the same as always. Except on this particular morning, they didn't move on. They stayed. And then more of them arrived. Twice as many as the day before. Quietly, efficiently, without any official explanation, certain rows in the stands were cordoned off. Restricted. Blocked with the kind of practiced nonchalance that only happens when someone very important is expected and nobody wants the crowd to figure it out before it becomes impossible to control. Staff were repositioned. Entrances that were open the day before were suddenly closed. VIP protocols that usually get reserved for Wimbledon, for Wembley, for the events that fill back pages and dominate conversation for weeks. Those protocols were quietly, carefully activated at a grass court club in Birmingham on a Tuesday morning. And the name moving through the venue in hushed tones, passed between officials and volunteers and tournament staff like a secret too large to contain, was Prince William. Most people brushed it off. Because it didn't make sense. The royals appear at Wimbledon. They appear at grand occasions, at charity galas, at events designed for their presence. They do not appear at first-round Birmingham draws with half-empty stands and no television cameras rolling. It felt like the kind of rumor that feeds on itself, growing in the retelling until it bears no resemblance to anything real. Someone overheard something. Someone misread a badge. Someone connected dots that weren't actually there. Except the signs didn't stop stacking up. The restricted entrances didn't disappear. The elevated protocols didn't ease. An internal staff alert circulated, the kind that doesn't go out unless the situation is real, and the people who saw it weren't talking, but their faces said everything that their silence was trying to conceal. And then, without announcement, without fanfare, without a single notification to the media positioned outside the main entrance waiting for absolutely nothing, 3 black vehicles rolled to a quiet stop at a private rear entrance behind Court 1. No sirens. No escort visible from the stands. Just 3 dark cars, and then a small group of people stepping out with the measured calm of professionals who've done this 100 times. And there he was. Dark tailored suit. Unhurried. Composed. Walking toward a private entrance at a grass court club in Birmingham like it was the most natural thing in the world. No media wall. No formal reception. No announcement over the public address system. Just a quiet arrival at an event nobody had circled on their calendar, for reasons that nobody was yet willing to explain out loud. Inside Court 1, Alex Eala had no idea any of it was happening. She was at the baseline, bouncing lightly on the balls of her feet, working through her shoulder rotation with the focused detachment of someone who has learned to build a wall between herself and everything outside the white lines. Her warm-up had a rhythm to it, deliberate and methodical, dialing in her timing on the grass with the patience of someone who understood exactly what this surface demanded. For her, in that moment, this was still just a tennis match. Another round. Another opponent. Another day of doing the work that all the other days had been building toward. But the energy around her had already begun to change. Heads turned slowly, almost involuntarily, toward the VIP area. Phones emerged. Whispers moved through the half-filled stands with the quiet speed of something that can't be contained once it starts. And within minutes, the question was everywhere, spoken in 100 different ways across 100 different platforms, but always the same question at its core. Why is he here? Not at Wimbledon. Not at a charity showcase with cameras lined up and speeches prepared. To Birmingham. A quiet draw on a surface that most of the tennis world treats as a prelude rather than a destination. What did he know that the rest of the world didn't? What had drawn the Prince of Wales, with all the demands on his time and all the events competing for his presence, to this particular court on this particular Tuesday? Because here's what nobody was saying yet, but everyone was beginning to feel: maybe he already knew what was about to happen. From the very first game, Ella didn't come out the way young players often do, swinging hard and hoping the momentum holds. She came out reading, measuring, like someone running calculations in real time, testing her opponent's patterns with the quiet curiosity of a player who isn't in a hurry because she already knows where this is going. Her movement on the grass had an unusual quality to it, not rushed, not hesitant, but precise in a way that didn't match the occasion. She was playing a bigger match than the scoreboard suggested. Every point constructed deliberately, pressure built through placement rather than raw pace, angles found and exploited with a maturity that made the empty seats feel somehow disrespectful. And then, early in the first set, she played a rally that made the entire stadium lean forward. It started as a defensive exchange. A deep return that forced her back. A scramble to recover that looked for a fraction of a second like the point was gone, like she'd overextended herself and given her opponent the opening. The crowd that hadn't been paying close attention started paying close attention. And then the shift happened. One explosive step forward. One forehand down the line, struck clean and flat and with the kind of certainty that doesn't look like a decision because it was made before the ball even left her opponent's racket. Gone. Not close. Gone. The crowd reacted immediately, but the more significant reaction came from above. In the VIP enclosure, Prince William leaned forward in his seat, hands clasped in front of him, eyes locked on the court with the kind of focus that doesn't come from obligation. He wasn't performing interest. He was interested, tracking every exchange with the attention of someone following a story that kept refusing to go where he expected, kept presenting new information, kept demanding his full concentration. And that kind of attention, from someone in that seat, at this event, changes the entire room. It changes how everyone else in that room watches. It raises the stakes of every point without anyone saying a word. As the first set continued, Ella grew sharper. Her second serve found more depth, pushing her opponent further behind the baseline than she wanted to be. Her return position edged forward, refusing to cede the court, taking time away with the quiet aggression of someone who understands the geometry of pressure. Her backhand began generating these heavy, penetrating shots that seemed to push her opponent not just physically but psychologically, deeper and deeper behind the line, more and more reactive, less and less able to dictate. Every game felt earned in the way that only the best matches feel earned, not handed over, not collapsed into, but taken point by point through accumulated precision and refusal to back down. Every hold felt like a small battle won. But nothing in the first set could have prepared anyone for what happened in the second. The rally that changed the afternoon came out of nowhere, the way the defining moments in sport always seem to. A moment that starts like any other exchange and then suddenly isn't. 20 shots, both players stretched beyond comfort, beyond the margin of safety that lets you play freely. Ella chased down 3 separate finishing attempts that should have ended the rally, sliding on the grass, resetting her balance with desperate athleticism, refusing to concede a point that by all logic was already over. The crowd was on its feet before the rally ended. You could feel them holding their breath, not wanting the movement, not wanting the outcome, just wanting the moment to keep existing a little longer because something about it felt rare. And then she changed everything. A sharp cross-court forehand that redirected the rally's momentum in an instant. A sprint to the net that covered the distance in 2 strides that shouldn't have been possible from where she was standing. A volley winner placed just inside the line with the delicate precision of someone who has practiced that exact shot 10,000 times in the dark, alone, when nobody was watching, when the only witness to the work was the sound of the ball hitting the court. The stadium erupted. And the cameras, instead of cutting to the crowd, instead of finding the fans already on their feet, cut directly to the royal enclosure. Because even the cameras understood that the most important reaction in that building wasn't happening in the stands. Prince William nodded. Just once. Controlled. Measured. But completely, unmistakably genuine. There was nothing performed in that gesture. No awareness of the cameras or the moment or what the image would become within the hour. Just a man watching something extraordinary being done in front of him, and acknowledging it the way people acknowledge things when words have already become inadequate. The nod of someone who didn't expect to feel what they're feeling and has decided, quietly, that they're glad they came. That image traveled everywhere before the match was over. Because here's the thing that nobody had said yet, but everyone was beginning to understand. This wasn't just about a tennis match anymore. This was about a player who had started pulling attention from places far outside the usual tennis conversation, and the question of why, and what it meant, and whether the people watching from the closest seats already knew something the rest of the world was still catching up to. Match point arrived without the fanfare that usually accompanies it. No drawn-out ceremony, no prolonged drama of the scoreboard building toward the moment. It arrived the way the best match points arrive, suddenly and inevitably, like the conclusion had been written long before anyone else in the building could see it. Ella stood at the baseline. The stadium had gone quiet in the way that stadiums only go quiet when something final is approaching, when the crowd senses collectively that the next few seconds are the ones they'll actually remember. She bounced the ball twice. The first serve went wide. A short return came back to her, positioned exactly where she wanted it, as if the moment had arranged itself. One step forward. One swing. Forehand down the line. Winner. For a fraction of a second, nothing. The kind of silence that exists only in the space between something happening and the crowd's nervous system catching up to the fact that it happened. And then the roar hit like something physical, like a pressure wave moving through the stands, fans already on their feet, cameras already moving, the sound building on itself until it filled every corner of a venue that hadn't expected to be this loud on a Tuesday afternoon in June. Ella stood there with her racket raised slightly, not dramatically, not in the pose of someone performing a victory for the cameras. She was breathing hard. She was aware. Completely, quietly aware that something about this moment was different from every moment that had come before it, that the ground beneath her career had shifted in some way that she couldn't fully calculate yet but could feel with absolute certainty. Above her, Prince William was applauding. Not the polite, measured clap of someone fulfilling a social obligation. The real kind. The kind that comes without thinking, before decorum catches up. He stayed in his seat long after the match was over, watching as she walked to her bench, collected her things, and moved toward the tunnel. He stayed as if he wasn't quite ready to release the afternoon yet, as if leaving meant acknowledging that it was finished, and some part of him wasn't ready for that. Reporters positioned nearby noted that he said very little. But he kept glancing back toward the empty court, the way people glance back at places where something remarkable happened, running it through their memory again and again because they can feel that it mattered and they're not entirely sure they captured all of it the first time. What he witnessed wasn't just a win. It was a statement delivered in the language that statements of that kind are always delivered in, not through words, not through press conferences, but through performance under pressure, through the accumulation of decisions made correctly when the margin for error was smallest, through the evidence of someone operating at a level that their age and their ranking and their tournament seed have absolutely no framework for explaining. But here's what actually matters. Strip away the motorcade. Strip away the VIP protocols and the doubled security and the social media response that turned a Tuesday afternoon in Birmingham into a global conversation before the sun went down. Strip all of it away and you're still left with a performance that would have demanded attention regardless. That would have demanded attention in an empty stadium with no cameras and no royal enclosure and no image traveling everywhere within the hour. The control she showed throughout that match wasn't the control of a player trying to project composure. It was the control of a player who no longer needed to try. The maturity under pressure wasn't a performance of maturity. It was the real thing, demonstrated in the small decisions, in the way she managed the second set after the first went smoothly, refusing to ease off, refusing to believe that momentum was a possession rather than something that has to be continuously earned. The ability to accelerate at exactly the right moment, and to hold her nerve precisely when the stadium was loudest and the occasion was pressing hardest against her, that isn't a characteristic of youth. That isn't the profile of a player still developing. That's something else entirely. Tennis careers are measured in slow increments most of the time. Year over year. Surface by surface. Gradual, grinding progress that accumulates in the margins, in the statistics that the casual fan never reads, in the results that the algorithm buries beneath bigger names and more familiar stories. Most players build their reputations slowly enough that the tennis world has time to adjust its expectations before the reality arrives. The name appears in a semifinal, and everyone acts surprised, even though the evidence was there for anyone paying close enough attention. But every so often, a player begins moving faster than the timeline allows for. Faster than rankings can capture. Faster than the industry's expectations can recalibrate. Faster than the usual mechanisms of reputation building have any framework for processing. And when that happens, the signals don't come through the usual channels. They don't arrive in ranking updates or press releases or carefully managed announcements. They arrive in the way people who don't normally pay attention suddenly start paying attention. They arrive in the way a future king sits forward in his seat at a mid-tier tournament in Birmingham, hands clasped, eyes locked, tracking every exchange with the focus of someone who has just realized they're watching something they weren't prepared for. That's where Eala stands right now. Not defined by Birmingham alone. Birmingham was one data point in a pattern that has been building quietly, drawing attention from places and people who exist far outside the usual boundaries of the tennis conversation. Each performance adding something to the accumulation, each match making the pattern harder to ignore, each result moving the conversation further from questions about potential and closer to statements about arrival. The fans noticed. They've been noticing for a while now, the way fans notice things before the official narrative catches up, the way crowds sense something before the commentators have the language for it. The cameras noticed, finding her face after big points with the instinct that cameras develop for players who repay the attention. And on a quiet Tuesday afternoon at a grass court tournament that nobody had circled on their calendar, a future king noticed too. And that's the detail that changes the story. Not because of who he is, not because of the title or the motorcade or the image that spread across every platform before the day was over. But because of what his presence at that specific match, in that specific city, on that specific Tuesday actually represents. The Prince of Wales doesn't show up to first-round Birmingham draws by accident. He doesn't arrive without reason at events that aren't on the official schedule, at venues that aren't designed for that level of attention. He was there because someone, somewhere, had already decided that this player was worth watching. Had already reached the conclusion that what was happening on grass courts in England this summer was something that deserved a closer look from someone positioned to understand what they were seeing. And then he saw it for himself. And he stayed in his seat after it was over. Eala is no longer being watched the way young players are watched, with the cautious, arm's-length optimism that tennis extends to talented newcomers before the evidence of greatness is overwhelming enough to justify full belief. She is being watched the way champions are watched. Closely, carefully, with the growing certainty that the next chapter is going to be worth being present for, that the story currently being written in qualifying draws and grass warm-ups and mid-tier Birmingham tournaments is going to look, from some future vantage point, like the beginning of something that felt inevitable once it arrived but that nobody quite saw coming when it was still close enough to touch. She walked through that tunnel in Birmingham without looking overwhelmed, without looking surprised, without the expression of someone who has just been handed something they weren't expecting and doesn't know what to do with it. She looked like someone who understood, quietly and completely, that the ground had shifted, that the matches from this point forward would be filed differently, discussed differently, watched differently, that the conversation around her name had crossed a threshold that doesn't have a gate you can pass back through once you've moved to the other side. She looked like someone who had known this was coming and had been ready for it longer than anyone outside that tunnel was prepared to believe. And somewhere behind her, in a royal enclosure at a grass court club in Birmingham, a future king glanced one final time at the empty court, as if replaying the afternoon in his mind.